It was a warm Saturday afternoon, the kind that made people slow down without even thinking. At the old community center on the edge of town, a group of friends had gathered like they did most weekends. They came here to relax, talk, laugh, and forget about the busy week. The place wasn't fancy at all. The paint on the walls had faded, and the lighting buzzed slightly. But everyone liked it because it felt safe and familiar. In one corner of the room sat an old, upright piano. Its wooden surface had scratches, and a few keys had chips on the edges. Nobody really knew how old it was, but it had been sitting there for as long as anyone could remember. Some people played it once in a while, most of them just for fun, and not very well. It was the kind of piano you expected to sound slightly out of tune. But nobody minded because no one took it seriously. Noah and Maya were part of the group that always showed up. They weren't best friends, but they knew each other well enough to tease and joke around. Noah was the loud, playful type who loved to challenge people. Maya was more quiet, someone who didn't talk a lot unless she had something worth saying. Most people didn't know much about her beyond the basics, but she never seemed bothered by that. On this particular afternoon, the group had gathered around a table talking about random things: work, weekend plans, funny videos, anything that came to mind. Noah was in his usual energetic mood, bouncing from topic to topic. He spotted the piano in the corner and grinned. When Noah had an idea, everyone could see it on his face before he even opened his mouth. "Hey," he said suddenly, nudging Maya with his elbow, "why don't you play something on that piano?" The others smiled, already guessing that he was trying to start one of his friendly challenges. Some leaned back, waiting to see where the conversation would go. Maya blinked, surprised. "Me," she said quietly. "Yeah," Noah laughed. "Come on, just a little tune. Something simple." Maya shook her head lightly. "I don't know about that." "Oh, come on, it'll be fun," Noah continued in a playful voice. He wasn't trying to be mean. That was just how he was always pushing people to join in, even if they didn't want to at first. "We're all bored anyway, and you never join the stupid challenges. Just try it." A couple of friends chuckled as they sipped their drinks. No one really expected Maya to do anything. Most of them assumed she probably didn't know how to play at all. After all, she never talked about music or anything artistic. She always kept those parts of her life private. Maya looked over at the piano. For a moment, she didn't say anything. Her expression didn't change much. But something in her eyes shifted. A tiny spark of thought that only someone paying close attention would notice. "It's not a big deal," Noah joked, waving his hands dramatically. "What's the worst that could happen? You hit a wrong key? Trust me, I've heard worse." The group laughed again. The mood stayed light, and Noah's teasing wasn't harsh. But still, everyone expected Maya to politely decline. She just didn't seem like the type to get up and perform in front of anyone. But instead of saying no, she slowly stood up from her chair. The room quieted a little, just enough for everyone to exchange surprised glances. Noah raised his eyebrows, unsure if she was actually going to do it, or if she was just moving around. "Wait, really?" he asked. Maya offered a small smile. "You said it's not a big deal, right?" Her voice was calm, not irritated or pressured. She walked toward the piano with steady steps, and the group turned their chairs slightly to watch. No one wanted to make it awkward, but something about the moment pulled their attention. The old piano looked even more worn up close. Some dust had gathered under the lid, and a cobweb stretched between two back legs. Maya brushed off the bench before sitting down. She didn't rush. Her movements were gentle and controlled, as though she wasn't just accepting Noah's challenge. She was stepping into something familiar. Noah crossed his arms with a grin, still thinking she might play a few clumsy notes. "All right, let's hear what you've got," he said. But Maya didn't answer. She simply rested her hands on her lap for a moment and looked down at the keys. Her fingers hovered above them lightly. She took a soft breath, the kind someone releases when they're remembering something old, something they've kept to themselves. The group watched with curiosity. The room wasn't silent, but it had shifted as if everyone sensed something they couldn't quite define yet. Noah, despite his playful challenge, suddenly wondered if she actually did know how to play. He leaned forward slightly, his grin fading into a look of interest. The others did the same. The joking energy had turned into anticipation. Maya pressed the first key. It wasn't loud. In fact, it was soft and gentle, but perfectly controlled. The note rang through the room clearly. She pressed another key, then another. The sound wasn't random. It had rhythm, purpose, and confidence. Noah's smile froze for a second. One of the friends whispered, "Wait, she knows what she's doing." But Maya didn't look at anyone. She focused on the piano in front of her, her shoulders relaxed, her back straight, her fingers moving with a sense of memory. It looked natural, like her hands knew exactly where to go without having to think about it. A few more notes followed, blending into a soft pattern that filled the room in a way no one expected. Even the slight buzzing of the lights above seemed to fade into the background. Noah opened his mouth to say something, but he closed it again. He didn't want to interrupt. The teasing challenge he'd thrown out so casually suddenly felt different, like he had accidentally opened a door he hadn't meant to open. Maya continued playing, her expression calm and distant, as if she were somewhere else entirely. Her fingers moved in smooth motions, gliding from note to note without a hint of hesitation. The melody, though simple in the beginning, started to grow into something fuller and warmer. The friends exchanged wide-eyed looks. They weren't just surprised, they were amazed. Noah watched her hands, unable to hide the shock on his face. This wasn't the kind of playing someone randomly tried for fun. This was skill real, skill that came from hours, days, maybe years of practice. He didn't say a word. For once, he didn't have a joke ready. Maya's posture stayed steady as the melody grew into a smoother rhythm. Her fingers danced lightly over the chipped keys, bringing life to an instrument that most people barely noticed anymore. It was like she had unlocked something hidden in the room, something that had been waiting quietly until someone knew how to wake it up. The shift in atmosphere was subtle but powerful. The friends leaned in not because they had to, but because something about the moment pulled them closer. Noah looked around, realizing everyone felt the same. I think a mix of surprise, respect, and quiet awe. He hadn't expected much when he'd joked around earlier. Now he found himself wondering how many things they didn't know about Maya. She wasn't showing off. She wasn't trying to impress anyone. She didn't even look self-conscious. It was clear she was simply letting the music guide her, letting something inside her come out naturally. The group sat quietly, letting the sound fill the room. Every note seemed to tell its own small story, and every movement of her hands revealed a little more of who she was, not from her words, but from her expressed. Noah slowly lowered his arms, his grin replaced by a softer expression. He felt a tiny pinch of embarrassment for assuming she wouldn't know how to play. But more than that, he felt admiration. He whispered under his breath, mostly to himself, "I didn't see this coming." And in that moment, the challenge that started as a simple joke had already begun to change into something else's discovery that none of them expected. The afternoon sun filtered through the windows, warming the room just a little more. The dust in the air floated gently, catching the light, and Maya's soft, steady melody carried through every corner, shifting the energy, pulling everyone into a moment they would remember far longer than they realized. Her hands moved like she was telling a story without speaking, a story none of them had heard before, a story that was only just beginning. The sound of the last notes drifted softly through the room as the melody faded, leaving behind a quiet stillness. No one spoke for a moment. It wasn't the kind of silence that felt awkward or heavy. It felt more like everyone was trying to understand what had just happened. Maya lifted her hands gently from the piano keys. She didn't move right away. Her fingers rested lightly on her lap, as though they were still remembering the feeling of the music. She finally looked up at the group, and the calm expression on her face stayed the same as before. Simple, quiet. Steady Noah let out a breath that he didn't realize he had been holding. "Okay, that was not what I expected." His voice came out softer than usual, and the group gave a few amazed laughs. Maya smiled politely but didn't say anything. She looked like she didn't know how to react to the attention, but she also didn't seem bothered by it. She just sat there calmly, as though this moment belonged to everyone else. not just her. One of the friends leaned forward in their chair. How long have you been playing? They asked. Maya hesitated. I don't know. A long time? She pushed a loose strand of hair behind her ear. I used to practice a lot when I was younger. Played like someone who practiced more than a lot, another friend said with a small laugh. Noah stepped closer, still staring at her hands like they were holding some secret. Why didn't you ever tell us you could play like that? He asked. Maya gently shrugged. It just never came up. Noah raised his eyebrows. Yeah, because you never play in front of anyone. I don't play much anymore, she said softly. I used to, a long time ago, but life gets busy. Things change. You forget old habits. That didn't sound like someone who forgot anything, one of the friends said. Maya gave a small, shy smile. Maybe not everything. The room warmed again as the group slowly began talking to one another, still buzzing with surprise. Some people replayed the moment in their heads, still amazed by how easily she handled the piano. Others kept glancing at her as though seeing her for the first time. Noah sat down on the bench next to her, keeping a respectful distance. You know, he said lightly, when I joked about it earlier, I thought you'd tap random keys and we'd all laugh. I didn't think you'd sit here and... He motioned to the piano. Do that. Maya looked at him, her expression relaxed. I know. That's why I did it. Noah blinked. Wait, what? She let out a small breath that sounded almost like a laugh. You always challenge people for fun. You don't mean anything by it. I know that, and usually I ignore it. But today, I don't know. I felt like doing something different. Different, Noah repeated slowly. You call that different? Maya nodded. Yeah, it was nice. Noah laughed, shaking his head. Well, you definitely surprised me, and probably everyone else. Maya looked down at the piano keys again. I wasn't trying to surprise anyone. I just haven't played in a long time. When I touched the keys, it kind of reminded me of when I used to love it. Noah watched her closely and realized she wasn't saying this to sound deep or mysterious. She was simply telling the truth. She looked like someone who had rediscovered something she didn't know she had missed. You used to love it. He asked. Maya nodded gently. Yeah. When I was young, I played every day. My parents encouraged it. I took lessons, practiced after school, joined small competitions, things like that. Competitions? Noah said, surprised. Like winning trophies and stuff? She looked thoughtful. Sometimes. I didn't care much about trophies, though. I liked the feeling of playing. It made sense to me. Like everything else faded away when I was sitting at a piano. She paused for a second. Then life got busier. More responsibilities, less time. I stopped practicing as much. After a while, I just stopped playing at all. Noah leaned back slightly, absorbing her words. He had never imagined this side of her existed. Maya always kept to herself, quiet but kind. Always present, but never trying to be the center of attention. One friend walked over. Can you play something else? They asked gently. Maya hesitated again. Not out of fear, but because she didn't want to turn the moment into a show. Maybe later, she said with a small smile. I don't want to hog the piano. You're the only one who can make it sound like that, Noah said automatically. Maya laughed quietly. That doesn't mean I should play the whole afternoon.
Ow.
The group slowly returned to their usual spots, though now the room felt different. People kept glancing at Maya, the same way someone glances at the sky after noticing a rare bird flying by surprised, curious and fascinated. Maya returned to her seat near the table. She sat down quietly, almost as though she hoped the attention would fade on its own. But the warm energy around her stayed. Noah sat across from her. He wasn't smiling as widely as before. His expression had softened into something more thoughtful. You know, he said, I really didn't expect anything like that. I was just joking, I know, Maya said gently. I didn't mean to push you into something uncomfortable, he added. You didn't. She shook her head lightly. I chose to play. Noah blinked. Why? Maya looked at the piano again, her eyes softening. Because sometimes it's good to remember an old part of yourself. even if it's just for a few minutes. Noah nodded slowly. He felt something shift in the way he saw her, not in a dramatic or heavy way, but in the way someone's opinion changes when they realize they overlooked something important about another person. He opened his mouth to say something, but one of the friends called out from across the room, breaking the small bubble around them. Double quotes, Noah. Come look at this. He glanced over, then back at Maya. We're talking later, he said with a hint of a grin. Maya smiled softly. Okay. Noah stood and walked toward the others. But every few seconds, he glanced back at the piano and then at Maya, still trying to piece the whole moment together. Meanwhile, Maya breathed in deeply, letting the air settle her thoughts. She hadn't planned any of this. She hadn't expected to play the piano today. She hadn't expected anyone to care. But something about the afternoon felt special, quiet, simple, special. Her fingers still tingled slightly from the keys. She looked at them, flexing them lightly as though the old memory still lingered in her muscles. She didn't feel embarrassed. She didn't feel nervous. She simply felt peaceful. A few minutes later, one of the friends sat beside her at the table. You know, they said kindly, that was really beautiful. I didn't know you had that in you. Maya looked down with a soft smile. Thank you. They studied her for a moment. Do you miss it? Maya didn't respond right away. She thought about her younger self sitting at a nicer piano at home, practicing long hours without anyone asking her to. She remembered playing pieces that made her heart feel full. She remembered the small music teacher who used to tap her shoulder whenever she lost focus. She remembered the gentle patience in those lessons. Finally, she nodded. Yeah, she whispered. I think I do. Friend smiled warmly. Well, maybe you should play again. Not just today, I mean. More often. Maya looked at the piano again, quiet and old, but still holding something familiar. Maybe, she said softly. Maybe I should. While she sat there, she noticed Noah watching her from across the room. Not staring, not judging, just observing. Trying to understand something he had missed before. He lifted his hand slightly, giving her a friendly wave. Maya returned a small one back. He made his way over after a few minutes. So, he said lightly, if you ever want to teach someone how to play, I'm available. I can't promise I'll be good, but I can promise I'll try. Maybe. Maya laughed softly. Maybe. He smiled. Seriously, though, thank you for playing. I know you didn't do it for me, but I'm glad I was here to hear it. Maya nodded, her smile warm. I'm glad you heard it too. The atmosphere eased into a comfortable flow again. Conversations picked up, laughter returned, and the room regained its usual weekend energy. But beneath it all, something had shifted quietly in understanding, a new connection. A rediscovered piece of someone who usually stayed quiet. People returned to their games and chats, but the memory of the melody lingered in the air like a gentle echo. No one said it out loud, but everyone knew they had witnessed something rare or real. Honest moment. And while the afternoon continued on, Maya felt something she hadn't felt in years. The quiet happiness of remembering who she used to be. She didn't know yet what it meant for the future. She didn't know if she would start practicing again, or if the piano would simply remain something she visited from time to time. But one thing she knew for sure, something inside her had awakened. And this was only the beginning. The rest of the afternoon moved on as usual. But something in the air felt different. Even though conversations filled the room, jokes floated around. People drifted in and out of small groups. The earlier moment with the piano stayed quietly alive. It lingered in the back of everyone's mind like a soft echo that hadn't fully faded. Maya sat at the same table as before, talking to a couple of friends about simple things, weekend plans, work stories, small, everyday topics. She spoke more than usual, though still in her gentle way. It wasn't because she suddenly felt the need to share everything. It was because she felt lighter inside. If playing those few minutes had opened a door she didn't know she had closed. Noah, on the other hand, kept glancing in her direction. He wasn't trying to be obvious about it, but he wasn't very good at hiding his curiosity either. Every time he looked at her hands, he remembered the way she played the smooth movements, the confidence she didn't show in her everyday actions. Eventually, when the people at the table shifted topics again, Maya quietly rose from her seat. She needed a moment to stretch her legs, maybe step outside for some air. She didn't announce it. She simply walked toward the door. Noah saw her leaving and quickly excused himself from his group. He wasn't sure why, but something inside him wanted to follow. Not to annoy her, not to tease, but because he felt like there was something more he needed to understand. Outside, the sun had begun to lower, painting the sky with soft orange tones. The community center's small yard was empty, except for a couple of wooden benches. Maya walked to one and sat down, leaning slightly back as she breathed deeply. A few seconds later, Noah stepped out and quietly approached. "Hey," he said gently. Maya looked up and gave a small smile. "Hey," he sat on the bench beside her, leaving a respectful space. The air outside felt fresher, calmer, carrying the sound of distant traffic and a few birds settling for the evening. "For real," Noah began softly. "You kind of blew my mind in there." Maya let out a small laugh. "It wasn't that special." "No," he said firmly, but still light. "It was. You don't give yourself enough credit." She looked down at her hands again, rubbing her thumb across her palm. "I don't know. I just haven't played in a long time. I wasn't even sure I still remembered how—" "You more than remembered," Noah said. "It was like watching someone return to something they're meant to do." Maya didn't respond right away. She took a breath, letting the cool air calm her thoughts. "You ever miss something so much that you don't even realize you miss it until it's right in front of you?" she asked quietly. Noah nodded slowly. "Yeah, I get that." He paused, then added, "Is that what the piano is for you?" Maya looked out at the sky. Maybe it felt familiar, comfortable, like stepping into an old memory. There was a gentle silence. Not awkward, not heavy, just peaceful. After a moment, Noah shifted slightly. "Can I ask something?" "You don't have to answer if you don't want to." Maya glanced at him. "Sure. Why did you stop?" Her eyes softened, and she leaned forward slightly, resting her arms on her knees. "Life," she said simply. "Responsibilities, school, work, family stuff. Everything started taking my time. And when I finally had an hour to myself, I felt too tired to practice. Missing one day became missing a week, then a month. Then suddenly I wasn't a piano person anymore." Noah tilted his head. "But you still are." Maya breathed out a quiet laugh. "Maybe a little." Noah watched her for a moment. "You know, you don't have to be amazing for it to matter. If it makes you feel something, that's enough." Maya looked at him with a small, grateful smile. "Thank you." Another calm silence settled between them, broken only by the breeze rustling through the leaves. It was nothing dramatic, nothing intense, just two people sitting outside, sharing a simple moment of honesty. Eventually, the door to the community center opened, and a couple of their friends stepped outside. They spotted the two on the bench and smiled. "There you are," one friend said. "We were wondering where you disappeared to." Maya straightened up a bit and smiled. "Just getting some air, you coming back in?" "In a bit," she replied politely. The friends nodded and went back inside. Leaving the two alone again, Noah looked at Maya, then at the door, then back at her. "If you want," he said carefully, "you could play again later. Only if you feel like it. No pressure." She gave him a side glance, amused. "You're not done being amazed yet?" "I'm not sure I'll ever be done," he laughed. "But really, only if you want to. I don't want to make you feel like you owe us another performance." "I know," she said. "I'll think about it." Noah nodded and stood up, stretching his arms lightly. "I'll let you have a moment. I'll be inside if you need anything." Maya nodded as he headed toward the door. Before he stepped inside, he paused and looked back. "And for what it's worth," he said, "I'm really glad you played today." Then he went back in, leaving Maya sitting quietly with her thoughts. She stayed there for a few minutes, letting the cool air wash over her. She thought about everything: her childhood, the piano she grew up with, the lessons, the long days of practice, her first small audience, the competitions she entered without caring about winning. She remembered the sound of the real piano at home, smooth and clear, and how she used to get lost in the music for hours. A soft ache stirred inside, her not painful, but nostalgic. After about 10 minutes, she stood and walked back inside. The room was lively again. Someone had opened a bag of snacks. Another was telling a funny story with exaggerated gestures. People turned toward her as she approached, offering warm smiles that felt less like surprise now and more like appreciation. She sat back down near the group. Feeling oddly calm, Noah looked at her from across the room with a small grin. He didn't say anything, but his expression asked the question for him. She shook her head lightly, as if saying, "Not yet," and he nodded with a smile, accepting her answer. The evening went on like that for a while, but then, after some time, Maya looked at the piano again. It sat there quietly, almost waiting. The chipped keys and scratched wood didn't seem old and worn anymore. They seemed like a reminder that something didn't have to be perfect to matter. With a steady breath, she stood up. A few people noticed her and looked curiously as she walked to the piano once more. She didn't say anything. She simply sat down and placed her fingers on the keys. Noah straightened in his chair. The others quieted down this time. She didn't think. She didn't plan a melody or decide how she wanted it to sound. She let her hands guide her, following the old movements she thought she had forgotten. The notes blended softly, forming something simple but warm. The group fell into silence again, not because she demanded attention, but because something about the moment felt gentle and real. Noah watched her with a quiet smile. Not shocked this time, but deeply moved. Maya played without worry, without pressure, without needing to impress anyone. The music wasn't perfect. A couple of notes were slightly off, but somehow that made it even more meaningful. It felt humanist and natural. When she finished, she closed the piano lid softly. The room filled with warm applause, not loud or wild, just heartfelt. She stood slowly and returned to her seat. One friend whispered, "You're amazing." Maya shook her head with a shy smile. Just practicing. But everyone knew it was more than that. They had just watched her reconnect with something she thought she had lost. Later in the evening, as people began gathering their things to leave, Noah approached her again. "You okay?" he asked gently. Maya nodded. "Yeah, I feel good." "You look like someone who found a missing piece," he said. She smiled softly. "Maybe I did." They walked toward the door together, stepping out into the cool evening air. The sky had darkened, but the energy around them felt warm. "Do you think you'll start playing again?" Noah asked. Maya took a slow breath. I want to." "Good," he said with a genuine smile. "I think that's the best thing I've heard all day." They walked to the sidewalk, the quiet night settling around them. Nothing dramatic happened. No big speeches, no sudden decisions, no emotional declarations. Just two people walking side by side, sharing a moment shaped by a piano, a challenge, and a rediscovered part of someone's heart. And for Maya, that was more than enough. The room felt almost too still after the last note faded from the air. For a moment, no one said anything. It was as if everyone needed a second to adjust to the new version of the person sitting at the piano. A moment earlier, they had seen her as quiet, gentle, and easy to overlook. Now, they were trying to understand how they had missed something so big. Something that had been there the whole time. She sat with her hands resting lightly on her lap, looking almost shy again, as though she wasn't the person who had just filled the room with such warm and beautiful sound. The piano keys still vibrated faintly, carrying the memory of her playing. In the silence, she looked around at the group and felt a soft heat rise to her cheeks. She had not expected the moment to become so serious. She thought she would play a few notes, maybe make them laugh, and move on. Instead, she had accidentally shown a piece of herself she usually kept hidden. But before she could say anything, someone near the back clapped softly. Then another person joined, and then another. Soon the room filled with warm applause that bounced off the walls and made her smile without trying. She lowered her head slightly, not out of embarrassment, but out of a feeling she couldn't quite name, a kind of gentle pride she rarely allowed herself to feel. At the edge of the group stood the one who had challenged her in the first place. He didn't clap right away, He was stuck between surprise and something like regret. He had made the challenge as a joke, never expecting anything more than a few wrong notes and some playful laughter. Instead, she had turned the moment into something unforgettable. When he finally lifted his hands to clap, his smile was different. Softer, a little shaky, almost apologetic. The others moved closer, gathering around her with warm smiles and excited voices. They asked her how long she had been playing, how she learned, why she never told anyone. She answered with simple words, speaking quietly but with a clear tone. She said she had been playing since she was young, that the piano had always been a place where she felt calm, and that she didn't talk about it because she didn't think anyone would care. But now, looking at their faces, she realized they did care. They cared a lot. Some were still smiling in surprise. Others still looked a little stunned, as if they were trying to remember if she had ever dropped hints about her talent. A few even looked inspired, as if watching her had reminded them of something they once loved but had forgotten. The one who challenged her stepped forward slowly. His face was a mixture of admiration and guilt, and he rubbed the back of his neck as he searched for the right words. He tried to make a joke at first, something light to cover his embarrassment, but it fell flat. So he tried again, this time speaking from a place deeper than his usual playful tone. He told her he was sorry, not for the challenge itself, but for assuming she couldn't do something just because she never talked much. She looked up at him with a calm and steady expression. She didn't need an apology, and she told him so. She said the challenge hadn't bothered her. If anything, it had given her a chance to share something she loved, something she normally kept to herself. She didn't mind the joke because she knew he hadn't meant any harm. But she appreciated his honesty. And she appreciated the look in his eyes now, the look of someone who had learned something. It became important. The group stayed gathered around the piano, talking and laughing as the room slowly returned to its lively energy. Someone suggested she'd play another song, something upbeat this time. She hesitated for a moment, unsure if she wanted to be the center of attention again. But when she looked around and saw the genuine excitement on their faces, she felt a warm sense of belonging settle over her. She nodded and placed her hands back on the keys. This time, she played something lively, a piece she had learned long ago, but had never shared with anyone outside her family. The rhythm was bright, playful, almost dancing, and the room responded immediately. People clapped along, tapped their feet, and even laughed when she added a few unexpected flourishes. The energy shifted from awe to joy, and she felt herself relax fully into the moment as she played. She noticed the one who challenged her standing a little closer now. He wasn't teasing. He wasn't smirking. He was just listening, genuinely listening, with his arms folded lightly and his expression soft. There was respect in his eyes now, not just for her playing, for her as a person. When she finished the second song, the room erupted again. The applause this time was louder, filled with laughter and cheers. Someone joked that they had been friends with a hidden star all along. Another person said they felt cheated that she had kept this secret for so long. She laughed with them, enjoying the warmth of their praise, but not letting it go to her head. The one who challenged her finally stepped forward again and asked if she could teach him something simple on the piano. His tone was playful but gentle, a clear attempt to show he was willing to learn from her. She smiled and agreed. She didn't tease him, though she could have. Instead, she treated him with the same patience and kindness she brought to her music. He sat beside her, trying to copy the easy patterns she showed him. He stumbled at first, hitting the wrong keys and laughing at his own mistakes. She laughed too, but it was a kind and genuine laugh, not one meant to make him feel small. Together, they created a moment that felt light and warm, a moment that grew from something that had started as a joke but turned into something meaningful. The group watched them with smiles, enjoying the way the atmosphere had changed. It felt closer now, more connected. Her piano playing had done more than surprise. Demet had brought them together in a way they hadn't expected. It had made the evening something that would stay in their memories. As the night went on, piano became the center of the room. People took turns trying to play simple tunes, laughing at their mistakes and asking her for help. She moved from person to person, guiding them with gentle instructions and encouraging words. The piano, once just a dusty piece of furniture, now felt alive, its warm sound filling the space with joy. The one who challenged her stayed nearby, watching her with a thoughtful expression. He didn't say much, but his quiet presence showed that he was still reflecting on what he had learned. He had discovered something important, that there was more to people than what they chose to show, and that sometimes the quietest person had the most to offer. As the evening slowly began to wind down, the room grew softer again. Some people left to get snacks. Others rested on the couches, still talking about the music and the unexpected turn of events. She sat by the piano, gently running her fingers over the keys one more time. The room felt warm, full of good energy. He walked over and sat on the bench beside her, leaving just enough space to make it comfortable. He told her he was glad she played. He told her the evening wouldn't have been the same without her. His voice was sincere, and she could tell he meant every word. She thanked him quietly, and for a moment, they just sat there, not playing, not talking, simply sharing a peaceful silence. Outside, the night had settled in. The soft light from the windows reflected on the piano, giving it a gentle glow. Inside, the air felt warm, full of the kind of calm that follows something special. She realized then, the evening hadn't just changed the way others saw her had changed the way she saw herself. For the first time in a long time, she felt seen, understood, and appreciated. And that feeling stayed with her, warming her from the inside as the night continued. Little did she know, the moment she had created with her music would shape the way the group saw her from that day forward. Something simple had grown into something meaningful, and the evening had become a memory they would all carry with them, especially the person who had started everything with one small, playful challenge. The night had grown quiet by the time the gathering began to slow down. The warm energy in the room softened into something gentle and calm, like the last glow of a sunset. People were still talking, still smiling, but the rush of excitement had settled. The old piano now sat quietly in the middle of it all. Carrying the memory of every note she had played that evening, she sat beside it with a soft smile, feeling a sense of peace she had not felt in a long time. It surprised her how something so simple, something she had done countless times alone, had turned into a moment that touched everyone in the room. She hadn't planned any of this. She hadn't wanted attention or praise. She only wanted to respond to a playful challenge without making anyone uncomfortable. But somehow, she had ended the night feeling more connected to her friends than ever before. One by one, people came over to thank her again for playing. They spoke with warm voices, saying how much they enjoyed it, how they never knew she had such a gift, how the music made the evening feel special. She listened quietly, grateful, but still a little shy. Compliments always made her feel a bit awkward, but tonight the words felt different. They didn't feel heavy or overwhelming. They felt honest. As the group slowly thinned out, the one who had challenged her earlier stayed behind. He lingered near the doorway for a moment, watching her with a thoughtful expression. He looked like he was trying to decide whether to walk away or come back into the room. Eventually, he took a slow breath and stepped closer. She noticed him before he reached her, and her eyes met his with a gentle calm. She could still see the mixture of curiosity and respect in his expression. It was the same look he had worn since the moment she first touched the piano keys. He stopped a few steps away and smiled in a soft, almost hesitant way. He told her again that he had been wrong to assume she wouldn't know how to play. He explained that he hadn't meant to tease her in a way that made her feel small. He had simply thought it would bring some laughter to the group. He didn't expect her to surprise everyone, including him. She listened patiently, nodding slowly as he spoke. She didn't need him to apologize again, but she appreciated that he wanted to. It showed sincerity. It showed he cared about how she felt. When he finished, she told him she wasn't upset. She explained that the challenge didn't bother her because she knew he wasn't trying to be hurtful. She said she was glad it happened, not because she wanted to prove anything, but because it gave her a chance to share something meaningful. He looked relieved when she said that. The tension in his shoulders softened, and his smile grew a little brighter. He told her the evening had changed something for him. He said he realized that he sometimes talked too much and assumed too quickly. Watching her play made him think about the things he might overlook in people, simply because he didn't ask or didn't look closely enough. She appreciated his honesty. She had always known he liked to joke, that he was the kind of person who kept the mood light even when things felt tense. But seeing this quieter, more thoughtful side of him made her understand him better. It made her realize that he wasn't just playful. He was also someone capable of learning, reflecting, and growing. They ended up talking for a long time. Not about the piano, not about the challenge, but about simple things. Their families, their hobbies, their memories from school, their favorite songs. They discovered that they had more in common than either of them expected. The conversation felt effortless, like something that had been waiting to happen at one point. He asked her how she learned to play so well. She told him about her childhood, how she used to sit by the piano in her living room for hours, pressing the keys gently until she found the notes that made her feel calm. She explained that music had always been a safe place for her, a place where she could express herself without needing loud words or big gestures. He listened with real interest, nodding slowly as she spoke. He said he admired that about her, the way she could communicate so much without saying much at all. She blushed faintly at the compliment, but smiled anyway. She explained that she had always been afraid of being judged. Music had been personal to her, something she kept close because she worried that sharing it might change the way people saw her. But tonight, watching how everyone reacted with kindness and admiration, she realized she didn't need to be afraid. People hadn't judged her. They had appreciated her. He smiled when she said that. He told her he hoped she would let more people hear her music because it deserved to be heard. His voice was gentle, not pushing, just encouraging. She looked at him and felt a warm sense of gratitude grow inside her. She realized that the person who once made her nervous with his teasing was now the person making her feel supported. It was a strange shift, but a good one. Before they knew it, the room had grown even quieter. Only a few people remained, speaking softly in the background. The night had grown late, and the soft glow from the lamps created a calm, a peaceful atmosphere. He stood up and asked if she wanted help closing the room or putting things away. She nodded, and they moved around the space together, stacking chairs, picking up cups, and straightening the tables. They worked side by side, sometimes talking, sometimes falling into a comfortable silence. At one point, they were collecting empty cups from the tables. He paused and looked over at the piano. He asked if she could play just one more song, not for the group, not for anyone else, but just for him. The request made her heart beat a little faster. She felt nervous for a moment, unsure if she should. But when she saw the honesty in his expression, the quiet hope in his eyes, she nodded. She sat down at the piano once more. The room felt calm and empty now. Nothing like earlier when everyone had gathered around with excited energy. He sat a few steps away, not too close, not too far, silently waiting. She rested her fingers on the keys and closed her eyes. Then she began to play. This time the music felt different, softer, more personal. She wasn't performing. She wasn't trying to impress anyone. She was simply sharing a piece of herself with someone who seemed ready to understand it. He listened silently, his expression gentle and thoughtful. As the notes floated through the room, something shifted between them, something small and quiet, but undeniably real. The song carried emotion in every note, and he felt it. When she finished, he didn't clap. He didn't speak right away. He simply sat there, letting the moment settle. Then he smiled, a small, sincere smile. He thanked her in a soft voice, telling her that the song was beautiful, that it made the night feel complete. She looked away for a moment, shy but happy. The warmth in his voice not loud, not dramatic, just honest, made her feel seen in a way she hadn't expected. They walked out of the room together, the soft sound of the piano still lingering in the air behind them. The hallway was quiet, and the cool night air greeted them as they stepped outside. They walked slowly, not wanting the night to end too quickly, before they parted. He turned to her and said something that stayed with her long after she went home. He told her that he was grateful for the challenge he made earlier, not because it was funny, but because it showed him something truly special. He told her that she had changed the whole evening with her music, and that he was glad he got to be there to witness it. She didn't know how to respond at first. The words touched her deeply, and she felt a warm glow inside her chest. Finally, she told him she was glad to. Glad for the challenge, glad for the music, and glad for everything that came after as they said goodnight. She realized something important. The night hadn't just changed the way people saw her. It changed the way she saw herself. And somewhere in the middle of everything, the laughter, the music, the surprise, and the quiet moments, a new connection had formed. One that neither of them had expected. One that would stay with them long after the piano's last note faded into the night.